Like that scale part where it's like, and like
yeah, that's just going back and forth. It's a kind of like a dominant 7 arpeggio. That part you talking about?
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just taking like a G dominant 7 chord. This would be my like root position version. So if I'm, you know, sometimes I'll like try and take like jazz chords and make something out of them. So this would just be like a jazz chord. This would just be G7 root position. Throw a little distortion on it, you get kind of a cool sound. Right? Especially if you throw that 9 in there. That's how I'm going. Now when I'm coming down, now all of a sudden I have a diminished triad. So going up a G7, down a diminished triad, back to the root. So that would be 5, 7, 6, 7, 4. I do keep the whole shape under my hands when I'm playing. I'm just kind of palming it, so I and then 6, 5. So try that out. Go ahead, play it one more time. Good, yeah. So then I'm kind of pulling off my pinky and my first finger. So as long as we get that motion, the rest just kind of falls into place. And then I go the second half, then when it comes back in, just a diminished chord going down minor thirds. That'll be. So that looks like 6, 7, 6, 7. Yep, 6, 7, 6, 7. Exactly. And then, yep. And then same exact idea, just now in E. It goes back to that riff. Thanks, man. So again, just using a little bit of music theory in there to stretch out that riff, right? So instead of just having it go for that one time, people might call it like motivic development, where you have an idea, and then you whether it's a key change or it goes from minor to major or vice versa, you just stretch that idea out a little bit more, so you get again more bang for your buck. And I think by using holistic development, I really can't stress that enough, especially whether it's solo playing, riff writing, songwriting in general. The use of motifs is super important, because that way it just doesn't sound like every riff is just completely unrelated and just kind of goes and goes. I mean, I certainly love tons of technical death metal where it's just just insane riffing the whole way through. But I think to try and borrow from a little bit of that, but also have the songwriting aspect to it, where you take that riff and you stretch it out, just because the listener will be able to latch on to that, they'll be able to hear that part, and even if they don't get it the first time through, subconsciously they're going to pick up on that motif of this. And plus, I just think it sounds cool, to kind of take this one sort of germ of an idea and have it sort of multiply out, even if it only goes one at a time. And I'm not saying you have to have this idea and go cycle it through all 12 keys, but just one key change is enough to kind of get the point across, and that way too it just sort of helps to stretch out that part, and it makes, bottom line, it just makes things feel like more like a song, rather than like here's riff A, here's riff B, here's riff C, here's riff D, and then just going down the line. And then that last little part, this is just kind of cool, just really basic. Just doing a very, very simple part, but then just have that, and it just gives a little bit of extra flair to it. I'm just going, just breaking. but it's got a different drumming over it. That's another thing that I like to do, where I'll take, you know, one riff that maybe has like a thrash beat over it, and then all of a sudden it's got a blast beat. So the listener's still getting that same riff, but it's just sort of presented in a different context now, because drums, they totally dictate how you feel a riff. You know, I mean, if you hear a riff that's, you know, in halftime, you're gonna feel a different groove rather than like a thrash beat or a blast beat. So, you know, just because we're guitar players doesn't mean we can't also think about, you know, what other, you know, instruments are doing and stuff like that, especially if you play in a band. You know, try and be able to hear these different types of things in your head. You know, so like, oh, cool, like, you know, how can I, you know, work with the drummer and coming up with a bunch of different, you know, ideas. And sometimes, you know, a lot of times the drummer will be like, hey, if I try this, and, you know, don't be, you know, afraid to, like, sometimes we have a drum beat, you know, how we want it to sound in our heads. Like, well, I really want a thrash beat, but, you know, try and mix it up, because you never know, it might grow on you. You might say, like, I'm really not feeling halftime there, and then you jam it a couple times. Maybe the drummer's like, oh, dude, it's gotta have halftime. And you kind of find that middle ground, like, all right, well, how about establish it with the thrash beat first, and then when it comes in later in the song, then you throw in the halftime beat there, and that way sort of everyone's happy, and, you know, in the end, hopefully the listener wins out, because, you know, they're getting this riff presented on a bunch of different, you know, a bunch of different ways. Make sense? Cool. Alright, what about you guys? Any questions at all about anything we've done, or any different territory you want to take it into?
You know, definitely interested in getting more into the more obscure modes and things.
Okay.
Still work over like basic metal riffs, and
Yep.
I was wondering, instead of just being such a broad about it, what about that Hungarian minor thing on the video with Band Happy?
Yeah, totally. Hungarian minor is is anyone else familiar with that scale at all, or no?
I used to do a lot back in high school.
Okay, cool. So it's just like harmonic minor, which might be a scale you're familiar with. If you're not, I'll play it for you. Harmonic minor sounds like this. So it's a minor scale.
Is there a 3 string way of doing that? I mean,
yeah, of course. Just like that. Which is good to know all different ways of playing it, you know, because you never know, you might find different licks that you like. It might pop out at you more with a number string version. But if I'm talking about interval theory, so it's kind of at my root, my minor, major second, minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth, major seventh, back to the root, right? With Hungarian minor, it's the same exact scale, only one note change. And it's that augmented fourth, right? So instead of a perfect fourth, it's got. So it's one of the few scales that I can think of off the top of my head, other than like a blues scale, that has a chromatic built into the scale. And by chromatic, I don't just mean one half step, I mean 3 half steps in a row. So automatically, for metal anyway, I mean the riffs just jump out at you. Alright, so just playing through the scale almost sounds like a riff. So it's really, really awesome scale to use in metal, you know, all different types of music, classical certainly. And you can use it really in solos to create really cool melodic lines, you know, especially if you like to do different bends and stuff like that, which I like to do. Why not, since you have an amp, why don't you like just kind of play something like, you know, you can even just strum like an A minor chord like this. Kind of go back and forth between, like, why don't you do something different? Yeah, you can turn up a little bit. Just kind of. Alright, 1, 2, 3, go. hear it has a harmonic minor sound to it, and because you have that chromatic built into the scale, you can do tons of cool stuff. And I always like to experiment with, as many different feels as I can that I'm playing for the solo. So, one thing you might want to try and find is there an open string I can use somewhere in that scale? There might be multiple open strings. In the case of A minor or A Hungarian minor, I can use my open E. Yeah, that was in B minor, and I used the D string. In A minor, you can E, A, you can't use D, but so you have E, A, B, and high E. So a lot of cool stuff, like you can do something like right, so that's just over A. Create a little bit of tension and resolve it on the, because keep in mind that E is the fifth of A. So that's basically a power chord. So if I can take that and twist it around them, right, really abrasive and gritty sound. Maybe you want to use the high E string. You get the idea, right? And certainly, again, with open strings for more riffing purposes, I can just take this scale just by playing the A note in between the scale. It almost sounds like a riff right off the bat. All I'm doing is walk up the scale and playing the A note. You can hear just, a little bit of practice, you start really making the scale come to life. That's the cool thing about learning new scales is, sometimes there's a different configuration of notes. Sometimes you might be stuck in like a slump with your writing or this or that or solo stuff. You'd be amazed at just learning a new scale, what that can do. You say like, oh, I've never put that combination of notes together in that way or looked at it that way, and then all of a sudden, you might have 10 riffs jump out at you right away. They might, after a week, might all be stinkers, and you might need to revise them some more. But the point is, you start playing with these sounds, and you never know, what things will jump out at you. Or you sit down right off the bat, playing the scale just by playing that open string connection with the riff that right, some kind of cool off time thing. They can really play around with this thing.